Greetings fellow Gorehounds and Happy New Year, and welcome back to yet another Blood Splattered vlog. So I'm putting together my top 10 movies of 2016 list, and as a result of that, there was a lot of movies from last year that I totally forgot to see or just didn't have the time. So for the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing catch up, and this week's movie, Blair Witch, is a movie that I really wanted to see last year, but I just didn't have the time for it. And holy shit, do I wish I had made the time to see this movie in theaters, because this is the Blair Witch sequel that I have wanted since the original movie came out. And yes, there is the Book of Shadows, but I barely count that movie. It is just, that movie is one of the, most disappointing movie experiences I've ever had, because I love the original Blair Witch, and that movie felt like it betrayed everything I loved about the Blair Witch, and it expanded the mythology a little bit, but it just didn't feel right. Whereas this movie completely feels right. This feels like not only a proper sequel to the Blair Witch, it also expands the mythology in ways that I found way more interesting, to be honest. And on top of that, unlike Book of Shadows, I was actually pretty scared watching this movie. Granted, I watched it in the dark at night and not really alone because Count Dracula was there. I did watch this in an environment that was probably more conducive to scariness than when I watched Book of Shadows with a group of friends. But even outside of that, the atmosphere of this movie was way more spot on with the atmosphere of the original Blair Witch. Because at any second in this movie, I swear I felt like anything could jump out at any moment. It was like a fucking horror ride at Universal or something. It was fucking intense. And on top of that, the acting's really good. I actually cared about the characters in this, unlike Book of Shadows, and I really love that this movie didn't answer all the questions like I feared it would. Because to me, the Blair Witch is something that's best left in the shadows as much as possible, and while this movie gives us more glimpses of her, it is, oh my god, super satisfying the little glimpses we get, because while we still don't get a good look at her, it is just enough to just fuel your nightmares for days on end. Now, on the downside, the one thing I will say about this movie is that when it comes to found footage logic, it does kind of lack a little bit. There are many times where you're sitting there going well, I guess this kind of makes sense if it was all magically put together through magic and shit, but you kind of gotta fudge it for the sake of the movie. But at this point, unlike the original Blair Witch, I'm not going into it thinking, oh man, this is real, so it didn't really bother me that much. Anyway, my fellow Gorehounds, I highly recommend Blair Witch. I don't think it's gonna make my top 10 list. It might make my honorable mentions, but not my top 10. But besides that, I highly recommend this movie, especially if you're a fan of the original Blair Witch and felt cheated as shit from Book of Shadows. And with that all said, let us move on to the spoilers. Okay, so this movie picks up years after the original movie. In fact, I think it was set in 2014 at the beginning, and we're following the brother of the main character from the original movie. We're following the brother of Heather. And basically, the brother has discovered a YouTube video of someone investigating the woods and discovering a girl who looks very similar to Heather. So he and his friends decide to get together and go out and find her, and they bring along with them this girl who's making a documentary on him and his sister. And they bring along this local who is just, this local was batshit crazy, but he was perfect to represent that kind of New England, superstitious craziness. He was just Count Dracula is from that area, and he's sitting there going oh no, they completely nailed Maryland. Anyway, they bring these guys along and they go into the woods and they start crossing some familiar paths from the original movie. For example, they cross the river where famously they argued over the map in the original movie. And once they cross that river, shit goes off the fucking rails. The best way I can describe it is that some people keep calling this a complete rehash of the original movie, where I disagree. I feel like this movie is way more like Aliens to Alien. This movie is just everything ramped up. It's intense. There's a lot more chases. There's a lot more fucking you actually get the sense that this is a true fucking monster movie just with a witch. She's fucking knocking down trees. She's fucking murdering people. She's grabbing their arms and dragging them into the woods. It's fucking... oh my god, I'm sitting there going I did not expect this movie to go that far, because I knew it was harkening back to the original Blair Witch, and this movie gives us way more than the original Blair Witch did, but without ruining anything. And I know I'm kind of stumbling over my words right here, but I am legitimately giddy and excited about talking about this movie, and so my mind's going in a million places as wanting to say a million things about it, and then the moment I try to spew it out, I I'm at a loss for words. So anyway, the characters start getting picked off one by one. There's some time distortion, like a character like disappears and then comes back with like a beard and it's indicated that he's been there for years now. Another character has a tree dropped on them and then they're ripped apart by the fucking Blair Witch off screen. And then another character is like, she's trying to climb this tree to get this drone and then she's pulled off by the Blair Witch and dragged off. Other characters end up uncovering the house from the original movie, and the house itself is like the House of Leaves. It's like a maze inside, and the fucking witch is like the fucking Minotaur. In fact, there's a lot of Greek mythology evoked in this movie because one of the things the characters realize is that if they don't look at the witch directly and instead look at her through their camcorder, kind of like Medusa and the mirror, then she won't grab them and they can walk past her. Now granted, the movie doesn't make it clear how much of that is it actually working and how much of that is the witch fucking with them, and I kind of liked that it didn't answer that completely. But it did lead to some really awesome, intense moments of them like working around the witch and us only getting really quick glimpses of her, and oh my god, it's like Slender Man on steroids. Like, I'm looking at that and I'm like, I'm shitting my pants. But on top of that, the movie's also filled with a whole lot of Easter eggs from the original movie. For example, there's actually parts in the movie in which like the frame glitches, and like if you pause it for a second, you will find that like some of the things that it glitches into is footage from the original movie, which doesn't necessarily make sense on a technological standpoint because why would their cameras have the footage from the original movie doctored into it, but does make perfect sense if you're talking about like the witch infecting their cameras and shit like that. Now granted, the only reason why they would be doing that is for us, the audience, but oh, whatever. I was willing to roll with that because I was having so much fucking fun. Now, I read a lot of reviews about this movie that was calling it a complete rehash/remake of the original movie, and outside of its title, I don't see it. Like, I was sitting there watching this movie expecting it to be beat for beat the original movie, and they do so many different things that I was sitting there going like, how did anyone find this to be a rehash? In fact, I thought Bobcat Goldthwait's fucking Bigfoot movie, Willow Creek, was way more of a rehash of Blair Witch than this movie was. In fact, during that movie, I was having so many flashbacks to the original Blair Witch, whereas during this movie, I was thinking about how different what is happening is different from what happened to the original Blair Witch, even though it is building upon the mythology of what the original Blair Witch set up. I don't know if any of that makes sense. I feel like my mind is going a mile a minute because I just fucking love this movie, and I know I'm in a minority on that, and I'm actually kind of shocked because, like, sitting there watching this movie, I was just like, oh man. Like, I know part of the reason why I didn't even make the time to go see this movie outside of being completely busy was because I had heard so much bad word of mouth about it, but holy shit, the word of mouth was fucking wrong. This movie is awesome. Now then again, I'm the kind of guy who loves found footage movies when they're done well, and I feel like this is done well. But whatever, haters are gonna hate, and people are gonna like what they like, so who cares? The point is, I fucking love Blair Witch. I think Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett completely knocked this out of the park, and I look forward to their, next projects because I love those two, and they've been making awesome fucking films since they started their career. Like, The Guest is a fucking masterpiece, and if you have not seen The Guest, you need to seek it out because it is awesome. And I love their segments of VHS as well as Horrible Way to Die. That's also a really great fucking movie. And You're Next is probably my favorite home invasion /slasher of there's some other ones like Kidnapped that were really fucking awesome, and I fucking love that. But You're Next is fucking awesome, and You're Next at least has one of my favorite heroines in a home invasion /slasher movie from the last few years. God damn it, I am really fucking rambly. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, that was my review of The Blair Witch. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't worry, I will have my top 10 films of 2016 list out before the end of the month. Hopefully. And I sincerely hope you all enjoyed my brain damage review, because that was a review that was a long time coming, and I had written that back in fucking August, and I was really looking forward to finally showing it to all of you, and I hope it was worth the wait. Obviously, I'm going to be trying to get more Blood Splattered Cinema episodes out this year, because I think last year I only got like 3. I want to get way more out this year. I want to get fucking at least fucking 6, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, peace out, and I'll catch y'all later.